Hey everybody, welcome back to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron. We're starting on something new today. Well, actually continuing on something that we did in videos quite a while ago, but we're finally getting back to it. So, if you look around the shop, first of all, somewhat cleaned up. I actually did something, imagine that. But you'll also notice that long step's sitting over here in the corner, and our main working bay is wide open. Why, you might ask? Because we're finally getting back on the purple dually that's been sitting here where long step is now. I've had a few people comment and ask me, hey, what's going on with the purple dually? Are you gonna do anything to the purple dually? Yes, we are, and we're starting back up on it today. So I pulled it outside. I got it over here in the wash area, and I'm gonna pull the pressure washer out and blast the crap out of it. It's got algae growing on it, dirty, and algae completely taking over the inside of the fenders. Then I'm gonna clean the frame up really good, clean the rear end up really good, all that stuff, everything back here, because we're cutting that frame, shortening that chassis up, and then we're gonna put this bed on it right here. So if you've been following the channel for a while, you'll know that this is Project Hotshot. If you're new to the channel or just watching the video, it's Project Hotshot. Shortening the frame, putting that bed on. We're going to clean it up and make it a lot nicer, and at the end it might be for sale, but for now I'm going to get set up. I'm going to get the pressure washer out and I'm going to clean the heck out of that thing, and then we'll get it back in the shop and get going on it. You guys can see with me washing it, it's bright out here and I'm probably not getting the camera angles all that great, but it's actually a lot dirtier than I thought it was. It actually didn't really look that dirty, but I don't know if you can see the difference here where I haven't washed it versus where I've washed it. It's pretty dirty. It's coming out clean. I'm trying to get the best angles that I can. It's hard, especially on the rear frame, because there's so much stuff you got to go through and around. But I got the passenger half of the truck completely done. I'm going to go over and do the driver's side, and then we'll get the rear end better, and then we'll move it back inside and keep going on it. Alright, got all done pressure washing this thing, got it as clean as I could get it with the pressure washer, which was my goal. I'm not trying to detail it or anything like that because it's getting a lot of work, but got her all pressure washed. Just letting it sit out here in the sun and dry so I don't drag all the dripping mud and water back in the shop. So give it a little bit of time to dry off and let all the mud clumps and stuff that are left fall off and whatnot. While I'm waiting, I went ahead and cleaned the bed out on Roadrunner. It's pretty well cleaned up other than getting washed out. So told you guys I'd make slow progress on it. Just, you know, little things I can do quickly. So got that cleaned out, waiting on the truck to dry. We'll bring it in the shop and get back on it. All right, we're ready to get some work done. In the meantime, while I was letting hotshot dry, I took some microfiber towels and cleaned all the dust off a long step. She can sit here and glisten in the LED lights. And I got the shop mess pretty well cleaned up. I even swept the floor. I can't remember the last time I did that. So, shop's pretty clean. Hotshot's back in the shop. We're going to start tearing her down to do the frame section. To do that, I got to pull off the fuel tank, exhaust, rear wiring, rear brake line's got to come off, drive shaft's got to come out, and then I'm going to have to cut these risers that they put on here off to do the frame section right. And then I don't know, I don't think, see, that bed needs to sit on their level, and it looks to me like those pieces of metal that they have on there are higher than the frame back here. So once I get it cut and get ready, I'll put a level, I'll put a level on it and see where we're at. But we want that bed to sit level with the flat section of the frame back here and forward. So if we can reuse that channel, we'll do that. If it doesn't sit level, then I'll come up with something else before we set the bed on. But right now, we're gonna get started taking the fuel tank, drive shaft, exhaust, brake lines, wiring, and anything else that's in our way off. So here we go. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is take a pair of side cutters, and I'm gonna cut my vent, my return, and my supply line. They got little 6-inch sections of rubber right there at the top of the tank, and they're all dry rotted and old, and I'd replace them anyways. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them to get them out of the way. I'll pop my ground off the tank, pop my sending unit wire off the tank, maybe. There we go. Get the sending unit wire out of the way. Sorry about that. I had to go outside and see what was going on. I don't know if you guys heard that revving or not, but went out there to see what was going on. There's some kids playing on a side-by-side that didn't even look like they were old enough to be operating a side-by-side, so I ran them off. I don't need them getting hurt here. Alright. We got those loose. Now, this truck used to have a dump bed on it, and that's why it has this cage around the fuel tank. They don't usually have these. It's just got it to protect it with the dump bed coming down and whatever else. So when we put the hotshot style bed on here, we're not going to need the cage. So I'm going to take the cage loose, take it off, and get down to our tank straps, and then once we get there, I'll put a jack underneath it, and we'll get the tank dropped. Good thing I swept the floor. Took care of that in a hurry. Okay, I got all that cage and everything off the tank. I gave my dad a holler. He came over. He's going to run the jack for me. I'm going to get underneath, and I just got the 8 bolts on the straps that are normal for a square body. I can get them off from the inside underneath. So I'm going to go down there, take those off. He's going to watch the jack and support the tank for me, and we're going to drop it out of here. Alright, there.
Lower it.
Go out towards you a little. Alright, now let it down real slow. Alright, I'll let it sit there.
Yeah.
Or not.
See, if you would have had me over where it was, it would have still been level.
Alright, go ahead and pull the jack out. Drag this back out of the way for now. Get it away from sparks from grinding and cutting, and then we'll move on and do the next thing. Alright, now I gotta get my exhaust out of the way. So I'm just gonna take my Sawzall and cut it off up here. Then I'm going to cut it again. I'm going to cut it again back here behind the muffler because I'm going to remove those exhaust hanger brackets that are there, because when we put an exhaust back on it, we're going to go with something different. So I'll cut it back here. And then I just got to take the hanger back here off, this hanger and one up here, and the whole exhaust system will drop out in 2 pieces. So I'm going to bring you guys around here and I'll show you a little trick to getting these factory rivets out of the frame. Okay, so when you got your factory rivets here, there's a lot of different ways you can take them off. You can take a torch and heat them up cherry red, and then take a punch and punch them through. You can grind the heads off. You can take an air chisel and just hammer at it till you're deaf and they eventually pop. Easiest way I found to do it, a buddy of mine told me about this. I'm going to take and cut a plus sign into those rivets, and then I'll take my air chisel back and it'll just go and bust it right off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now I'm going to take my air chisel with a chisel bit on it, and I'm just going to go in from the side and just hammer them off. I don't know why it is, but if you cut that cross in them, they pop off that easy. If you just try to take an air chisel and just break them off, you'll go deaf before they pop through. So for some reason that works really good. And then you can go get a pointy bit. I just take the corner of my chisel and pop these through the frame. Might have to go get a pointy bit. There we go. Just like that, our exhaust hanger's off. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other two, and we'll get the exhaust off of here, and then we'll move on to the next thing we're taking apart. Alright, this truck has a 2-piece drive shaft in it with a carrier bearing right here. And this yoke will pull off of this other half of the drive shaft. If you take off this locking, I don't know what you want to call it, collar, locking nut, whatever. But you take that loose, and then there's 4 bolts down there with the U-joint straps. You got 2 on this strap, 2 on the strap on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a wrench, and I'll pop those bolts off. And then you drop the shaft down and just slide it out underneath the rear end. So I'll get that done, and then we'll move on. Okay, the wiring harness wasn't connected to anything in the back because the lights that were on it were wired into the bed that were on it 10 plus years ago, whenever it had a bed on it. So the last thing that I need to do to get ready to cut this thing is get rid of the brake line. So the brake line runs down the frame rail, comes back, and it goes into this union right here for the rubber line to the rear end of the splitter. So I'm going to take this loose here. I'm going to take all the clamps that hold it off all the way up in front of where I need to cut it, and then I'm going to cut that brake line off right there. Now, the reason I'm going to do that is because I found that's the easiest way to do this. So once I get done mating the frame back together and I need a shorter brake line, I flare the end down there where I cut it off with a fitting on it, and then I can put in a union, and I'll get a brand new piece of brake line and run it from my union back to here. So I'm going to bust that loose. If it'll come loose, we'll take our clamps off down the frame rail, and then we'll cut that line. I got a line wrench here. Sometimes they do better, sometimes they make it worse, but I always try to tighten it first to see if I can get it to move. Like right there, I tightened it and it started moving, and there we go, it came loose. Now if you live up north of the salt line and it's all rusty and the line's all rusty and all that, I know this because I used to live up there, there ain't no getting them loose. You get vice grip or something on there and get the cranking on them, and they just snap the line off, and you're going to replace it anyways. So do whatever you got to do to get it out. I'm actually replacing the rubber brake hose on this too, because it sat for 10 years and the brakes are hanging up. And if I haven't told you guys this before, 90% of the reason the brakes hang up on these older vehicles is because the brake fluid eats down, or eats up the rubber on the inside of the line, and then it gets real gooey and it starts closing up. So when you push on your brake pedal, the pressure will push through but it doesn't allow the fluid to come back to release the brakes. And then if you let it sit there for a while, then it'll eventually bleed back and your brakes will loosen back up, and then you can drive a little bit. First time you hit your brake pedal, your brakes lock up. So anyways, I'm going to take these clamps off, get this line down, and then we'll cut it up here in the front. Just a little hack that I do. I want to put my union clear up here. So I'm going to cut my brake line off back here, and then I can take it and bend it over and kink it so it doesn't sit there and leak fluid the whole time while I'm working on the truck. I'm actually going to do it back a little farther than I wanted to because I want to leave myself room so when I go to flare it, I've got room to get it out to flare it. So just got a little tubing cutter. Just gonna cut it like you normally cut a brake line. Got that cut off. I'm just going to take it back here. Put a kink in it. Now I shouldn't have any fluid leaking while I work on the truck. Get the old line out. And I think that's it. And just like that, shop's a mess again. That air hose is all drawn out, extension cord's all drawn out, the old cage off the fuel tank, tools laying around, dirt all over the floor, brake fluid all over the floor. That's why it doesn't get cleaned very often, because it lasts about 3 minutes. But I went ahead and cut my e-brake cable because it's easier than fighting them out of those unions. And I'm gonna have to get a shorter one anyway, so I cut those, and that was the last thing that's connected between the front and the rear. So now what we're gonna do is, I did a bunch of measuring before and I checked it about 15 times, but I need to cut 27 inches out of the frame for that bed to fit. I had it marked at one point, but I don't see the marks now. I must have power washed them off. But I know that these 4 holes right here are my rear gas tank strap holes for the bolts for the rear gas tank strap. So I can go anywhere behind there, cut it, go back 27 inches, whatever, wherever it is, cut it again. And then on the other side, I'll cut it in about the same spot, but it doesn't really matter where I cut it over there because there's nothing that bolts onto the frame on that side. So I'm not too worried about it. Now another thing is, I want to make sure I stay in front of this. Can you see it? It's flat down here and then it rises up a little bit. I want to make sure I stay in front of that, which I've got plenty of real estate to do that. So I can take 27 inches out, the frame's perfectly flat, top and bottom. There's nothing in the way. So I need to get a tape measure, start laying this out, and then we'll get to cutting. But that's gonna do it for this video. I'm gonna get it set up. I got a certain way that I set the truck up on jack stands. Make sure everything's level. Get the wheels off the ground so you don't have to worry about tires losing some air or whatever. So it's up level on jack stands, you know it's not gonna move. And I put a jack stand on the front end and I put a jack stand in front of where I'm gonna cut it. And I cut the back first, cut the rear line first, roll the rear end back, and then I cut the front line, and then I bring them back together. The reason I do that is because then I can leave the rear end on the tires, and it's easy to roll it back and forth. So I want to make a video specifically on shortening this frame. So this video was just cleaning it up and prepping it. And now we're at the point where we're going to start cutting stuff off. So I'm going to save that for another one. Appreciate y'all watching. You guys are great. Give me a comment, shoot me a like, subscribe if you're not, share if you are. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you next time.